Picture this. It is September 2025. You are walking through the Hollywood Hills, and the sweltering heat of the Los Angeles late summer is just beating down on the pavement.
Right, it's brutal out there.
Exactly. And you pass this abandoned 2023 Tesla Model Y. It has been sitting there for weeks.
You're baking in the sun.
Yeah, baking in the sun. But inside that luxury vehicle is a secret so dark, so horrific, that it has triggered a year-long, completely classified homicide investigation.
Which is wild because nothing stays classified in LA.
Nothing. But this did. And this investigation just culminated in the arrest of literally one of the biggest viral Gen Z pop stars on the planet. You have to stick around till the very end of today's show to hear the crazy, dark details of this, because it is going to shake the entire music industry to its absolute core.
It is genuinely one of the most disturbing sequences of events you could ever imagine. I mean, the fact that the entire legal system managed to keep it totally suppressed until now is just staggering.
We are Mike and Abby, and welcome to Daily World Podcasts. Forget everything you know about boring news. We are taking the wildest, most impactful stories that hit the planet today and breaking them down so you don't have to.
Whether you are on a long drive, crushing a workout, or just feeling a little bored, we are here to keep you updated with the world and make your next hour incredibly interesting.
All right, so we need to start with something that is going to hit your wallet directly, like probably within the next month.
Oh, great. Always good news.
I know, right? But we are watching these massive overnight tectonic shifts in global geopolitics, and it is creating an absolute nightmare for travel and the economy.
Okay, so what's the actual damage here?
So the International Energy Agency, the IEA, just released this terrifying timeline. They are officially warning that Europe has exactly 6 weeks of jet fuel reserves left.
Wait, hold on. Stop right there.
6 weeks?
6 weeks. That is mathematically impossible. You are telling me an entire continent with all of its massive interconnected infrastructure is going to run completely dry of aviation fuel in a matter of weeks.
Literally dry, yes.
But how does a localized conflict in the Middle East drain European airports so incredibly fast? You can't just turn off Heathrow like a leaky faucet.
Well, it all comes down to the mechanics of the global refinery to pump supply chain. And honestly, Europe's massive, gaping vulnerability.
Because they don't produce it themselves.
Exactly. You have to realize that Europe does not refine anywhere near enough of its own aviation fuel to sustain its flight network. They rely overwhelmingly on refined petroleum products moving through Middle Eastern shipping lanes.
They just import the finished product.
Right. So when those lanes get restricted, the pipeline doesn't just slow down, it essentially halts.
But there are reserves, right? I mean, they don't just run on a day-to-day delivery schedule.
They do have strategic reserves, which is exactly what that 6-week timer is counting down.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, the IEA is pointing out the mechanical reality of the logistics here. Even if the shipping routes magically reopen today, like completely clear of conflict.
Which they won't.
Which they won't. But even if they did, the lag time is brutal.
Yeah.
You have to get the raw crude out of the ground, refine it into jet fuel, which, by the way, is a highly specific, complex distillation process.
Right. It's not just regular gas.
No, not at all. Then you have to load it onto these massive tankers, ship it around the globe, unload it at European ports, and then physically pump it into the subterranean tanks at Heathrow or Charles de Gaulle.
And that takes a long time.
That entire process takes months. So the IEA is saying a severe, unavoidable hard landing is already locked in for the European aviation sector.
That is insane. So airlines just have to, what, sit there and watch the clock run out?
Oh, they aren't waiting. They are already panicking.
Really?
Yeah. Dutch carrier KLM just proactively announced they're cutting 1% of their total European routes for the next month.
I mean, 1% sounds like a rounding error. That doesn't really sound like a panic.
To a normal person, yeah, 1% is nothing. But in the fiercely competitive, razor-thin margin world of commercial aviation, pulling 1% of your capacity proactively is a massive, incredibly painful logistical retraction. It means thousands of passengers displaced, crews stranded, schedules totally shattered.
Just an absolute domino effect.
And that is just the beginning. Major airlines are sitting in boardrooms right now prepping what they call contingency groundings.
Wait, meaning they're just parking the planes?
Literally. They are drawing up plans to park significant portions of their short-haul fleets because they physically will not have the fuel to fly them.
That is wild.
And the economic shockwave from this is brutal. The International Monetary Fund just downgraded the euro area growth to a dismal 1.1% for 2026.
Well, because if you can't move people, you can't move business.
Exactly. The IMF is citing this exact energy shock as a massive, suffocating weight on private investment and consumption. It just stalls everything.
You know, if you're watching on YouTube right now, drop a comment and tell us if you'd risk booking a European flight for this summer, or if you're already screaming at your screen and scrambling to cancel your plans.
Seriously, do it.
Because sitting here looking at the sheer mechanics of this supply chain failure, the level of uncertainty is just staggering.
It is.
I mean, you book a non-refundable flight to Rome right now.
Yeah.
You might literally be buying a ticket for a plane that legally cannot take off because there's not a drop of combustible liquid on the tarmac.
And here is the root cause of this entire logistical nightmare, the real reason the supply chain is severing.
Okay, lay it on me.
The U.S. military just essentially declared the world's oceans a theater of war.
Wait, you mean a specific zone, right? Like a designated area of operations?
I mean globally. It is historic and honestly terrifying.
Okay, you need to back up. What exactly did they do?
So, on April 16 and 17, Joint Chiefs Chairman General Dan Kane and Defense Secretary Pete Hegseth officially established a new maritime blockade line.
A physical line.
Yeah. Picture a diagonal line drawn across the water from Ras Al Had, Oman, stretching all the way over to the Iran-Pakistan border.
Okay, so that's the threshold.
That is the new primary threshold. But the directive does not stop there. It authorizes U.S. naval forces to actively pursue and intercept any Iranian-flagged vessel.
Any vessel.
Any vessel. Or any ship providing material support to Iran, regardless of its location in international waters.
You cannot just do that.
Yeah.
I mean, that violates fundamental tenets of international maritime law.
Yeah.
Freedom of navigation is literally the cornerstone of global trade.
Right.
You were telling me the U.S. Navy has authorization to just pull over a commercial freighter off the coast of Japan because they suspect it has ties to Tehran.
Globally. Atlantic, Pacific, Indian Oceans. If military intelligence flags a vessel as supporting Iranian logistics, U.S. naval assets are authorized to engage in ship-to-ship interdictions anywhere on the planet.
That is, that's unprecedented.
We are talking about defensive and offensive boarding procedures. Visit, board, search, and seizure operations on commercial and state vessels.
They have essentially thrown the traditional concept of international waters completely out the window.
Exactly, in the name of national security.
The audacity of that is mind-bending. And the reality on the water is already reflecting this massive show of force.
Oh, absolutely.
You have the Iranian government putting out these highly polished, defiant statements claiming the Strait of Hormuz is fully open and operating normally.
Right, just totally normal.
But if you actually look at the raw, unclassified maritime intelligence data from tracking firms like Starboard, the truth is entirely different.
What are the numbers?
Since the data cutoff on April 15th, they have tracked exactly 4 ships entering the strait and 2 exiting.
4 in, 2 out.
6 ships.
Yeah.
Total. For one of the most critical economic choke points in human history, where normally dozens of massive tankers pass through daily, that is a ghost town.
It's completely dead.
The blockade is working, and it is choking the life out of global trade.
And the timing of this aggressive global blockade is incredibly bizarre because right in the middle of all this military posturing, a sudden ceasefire actually happened.
And really?
At exactly midnight local time in Lebanon on April 17th, a 10-day ceasefire between Israel and Hezbollah took effect.
10 days. That is barely enough time for the dust to settle. What does a 10-day pause even accomplish mechanically?
Mostly chaos, unfortunately.
How so?
The immediate reaction on the ground was just pure desperation. The second the clock struck midnight, thousands of displaced Lebanese civilians immediately rushed back south toward their homes and Beirut's southern suburbs.
They just ran back into the war zone.
Yeah, you had government officials literally screaming over radio and television broadcasts, begging people to delay their return, warning them the security situation wasn't stable.
But they ignored it.
Totally ignored it. They have been living in temporary shelters, terrified, and the moment they saw a window, they ran for home.
But the conflict hasn't actually ended. What are the actual terms of this truce?
The terms dictate that Israel halts offensive military operations in Lebanese territory, but they are keeping a 10-kilometer security zone.
Okay, so a buffer.
Right. Meanwhile, UN peacekeepers in the region are reporting that while major airstrikes have stopped, the Israeli military is still actively using heavy artillery in certain sectors.
How is that a ceasefire?
They are claiming they are purely defensive, preemptive measures to stop localized threats.
So it is a ceasefire on paper, but a powder keg in reality.
Yeah.
It's just a tactical pause.
Precisely. And impartially speaking, you have to look at how this highly volatile situation is completely fracturing U.S. domestic politics.
Oh, I'm sure Washington is handling this gracefully.
Yeah, right. The messaging is entirely split. You have former President Trump out in Vegas giving a massive speech, calling the ceasefire a historic day, and claiming that the broader strategic conflict with Iran is going swimmingly and will be wrapped up soon.
While the actual legislative branch in Washington is essentially eating itself alive.
Oh, it is absolute chaos in the Capitol. At the crack of dawn on Friday, the House of Representatives held a razor-thin, incredibly tense vote on extending FISA Section 702.
Okay, you need to break down FISA Section 702.
Yeah.
Because people hear these acronyms and their eyes glaze over.
Very true.
But this is massively important. How does this surveillance actually work mechanically?
Okay, so Section 702 of the Foreign Intelligence Surveillance Act is this highly controversial Host 911 intelligence tool.
Right.
Mechanically, it allows U.S. intelligence agencies like the NSA to conduct warrantless surveillance on non-U.S. citizens who are located abroad.
They don't need a warrant at all.
None. They can compel major tech companies to just hand over emails, texts, and phone records of these foreign targets.
But the catch is the incidental collection loophole, right?
Exactly. When these foreign targets communicate with Americans, the Americans' data gets swept up into this massive database without a warrant.
Which is terrifying.
It is. And domestic law enforcement agencies like the FBI have been caught repeatedly dipping into that database to search for information on U.S. citizens without ever going to a judge.
It is a massive privacy issue.
Yeah.
So what happened with the vote?
So the House voted to extend these warrantless surveillance powers for just 2 weeks.
2 weeks.
A tiny 2-week Band-Aid. They were heavily pressured by the executive branch to pass it without any new privacy limits. The vote was 214 to 213.
A single vote margin.
A single vote.
A 2-week extension for the most powerful intelligence-gathering apparatus on Earth. That shows an utter lack of consensus.
And it gets worse. On top of the surveillance chaos, you had fundamental war powers resolutions completely failing in both the House and the Senate.
Oh, so they can't agree on anything.
Nothing. The House narrowly defeated a measure designed to block the president from ordering further unapproved military strikes on Iran.
And the Senate.
Over in the Senate, a similar procedural vote to rein in executive war powers was rejected strictly along party lines.
So what does that actually mean mechanically for the military?
The mechanical result of all this political gridlock is that the executive branch is left with completely unchecked military authority. They can manage this unprecedented global naval blockade and the explosive Middle East conflict however they see fit, with zero congressional oversight.
That is a recipe for disaster. And you can see the ripple effects of this fracturing global order everywhere.
Oh, definitely.
It's not just the Middle East and Washington. Resource-rich countries are looking at the U.S. declaring blockades, they're looking at the supply chain snapping, and they're realizing that the Western-led unipolar system is vulnerable.
They are getting nervous.
They're making their moves to insulate themselves. Look at the Democratic Republic of Congo.
The DRC, the absolute epicenter of global cobalt mining.
Right. They just instituted a brand new mandate requiring a 10% strategic reserve on all cobalt exports.
Meaning what exactly?
Meaning anything not exported under strict government quotas gets funneled into a highly controlled national reserve.
Why does 10% matter? What is the actual mechanic of holding back that specific amount?
It is an artificial supply constraint. Cobalt is a crucial component in the cathode of lithium-ion batteries.
Which are in everything.
You literally cannot build modern electric vehicles, smartphones, or laptops without it.
Right.
By purposefully withholding 10% of the global supply, the DRC government just turned themselves into the swing producer for the entire global green energy market.
Oh, wow.
It is the exact same mechanical playbook OPEC uses for crude oil. They can now unilaterally manipulate global battery prices by tightening or loosening that reserve tap.
So they are basically taking control.
They watched the energy shock happen in Europe and decided they're going to take complete aggressive control of the green energy transition to insulate their own economy.
They are totally leveraging the chaos. And speaking of exploiting geopolitical vulnerabilities, the IMF and the World Bank just formally resumed relations with Venezuela.
Really? Venezuela?
Yeah, they are giving Caracas access to $5 billion in special drawing rights and reserves to stabilize their completely collapsing economy.
Which is a massive reversal of policy. I mean, for years, the West tried to squeeze the Venezuelan government out of existence.
Exactly. But now, the U.S. is quietly easing sanctions selectively.
Why now?
The underlying mechanics of this policy shift are clear. They are prioritizing raw global oil flow over ideological regime change.
Because of the Middle East.
Right. They need the heavy crude flowing out of Venezuela to offset the blockade chaos.
Which is making China absolutely furious.
Oh, they are not happy.
The Chinese Foreign Ministry is officially protesting the U.S. for keeping targeted sanctions on Chinese entities operating in Venezuela while simultaneously easing up on the host country.
It's totally hypocritical.
They're calling it illegal long-arm jurisdiction. And China is dealing with its own bizarre, boiling security issues right now.
What happened?
They just had a highly publicized bomb threat at their embassy in Tokyo, allegedly called in by a Japanese self-defense force reserve member.
You're kidding.
No. And this comes just a week after another Japanese officer literally broke into the embassy compound wielding a knife. The diplomatic friction is burning hot across the board.
It is a complete geopolitical powder keg. Even America's closest allies are breaking ranks to save themselves.
Like who?
Canada. They just essentially defied the U.S. embargo on Cuba.
Wait, Canada did?
Yeah. They just threw $8 million in emergency aid at Havana to bypass the U.S. economic blockade.
How do they bypass it mechanically without triggering secondary U.S. sanctions on Canadian banks? That's really tricky.
They are being very careful. They are funneling the massive cash injection through international bodies, specifically the Pan American Health Organization and the World Food Program.
Ah, so they launder it through the UN, basically.
Essentially. They are framing it entirely as humanitarian relief because Cuba is facing a total catastrophic energy collapse.
Right, I heard about that.
Air Canada is literally having to cancel commercial flights to the island because there is zero aviation fuel available at Cuban airports. The power grids are failing.
So Canada just stepped in.
So Canada is flat out prioritizing regional humanitarian stability over U.S. foreign policy, and they didn't even bother to consult the U.S. Secretary of State before pulling the trigger.
It is entirely every country for themselves right now. The grand alliances are fracturing in real time, and everyone is just scrambling for the lifeboats.
Well, world leaders scrambling for power is one thing, but that completely pales in comparison to the absolute mess we're about to get into regarding a former NBA player and the literal mob.
Oh, man. This next story is the absolute definition of amateur hour meeting organized crime.
It really is. We are talking about former NBA player and assistant coach Damon Jones.
Right.
Sweeping federal court documents just dropped, revealing that he is the first of 34 defendants to plead guilty in a massive multi-state federal gambling and wire fraud sweep.
34 defendants.
Yeah, this is an incredibly sprawling investigation into illicit sports betting rings, and Damon Jones is the first high-profile domino to fall.
Okay, you have to explain the actual mechanical scheme here because it is wild and incredibly stupid.
Okay, so the core of the scheme was essentially the trafficking of non-public, high-value injury data.
Insider trading for sports.
Precisely. Damon Jones was heavily leveraging his personal, intimate relationships with absolute NBA superstars, specifically LeBron James and Anthony Davis.
Okay.
He was getting inside information on their health, their chronic soreness, and their availability for upcoming games hours or days before it was mandated to be announced to the public on the official injury report.
Because that gap in time is where the money is.
Exactly. He would take this insider data and sell it for roughly $2,500 a tip to high-rolling sports bettors.
Who are directly tied to the mob.
Directly tied to the Gambino and Genovese crime families. These bettors would use the information to place massive, highly leveraged wagers before the Vegas sportsbooks could adjust their betting lines.
That's wild.
In one documented instance, federal prosecutors have recovered text messages of Jones explicitly telling a mob-linked co-conspirator to bet heavily on the Milwaukee Bucks because he knew for a fact LeBron was going to be sitting out.
Did they win?
The Bucks won that game, and the syndicate cashed in.
So let me get this straight. You make over $20 million in your 11-year NBA career, and you decide your next logical step is playing a glorified, easily manipulated decoy for mob-rigged poker games in the Hamptons.
Pretty much.
Are you actually kidding me right now? The FBI caught him on intercepted texts, bragging to his co-conspirator, literally typing, "Y'all know I know what I'm doing," while he is essentially being used as a shiny object.
Wait, what do you mean by a shiny object? Like, mechanically, what was his role?
They used him as the face card. They needed a celebrity to legitimize their illicit underground poker rooms.
Oh, I see.
They would parade Damon Jones around to lure wealthy, unsuspecting victims doctors, lawyers, hedge fund managers into these exclusive Hamptons games.
Right.
And while Joan is puffing his chest out thinking he's some criminal mastermind, the mob guys are literally using hidden micro cameras and infrared technology built into the tables to cheat these wealthy marks out of millions of dollars.
Wow.
He was a pawn. It's deeply embarrassing.
He was completely used. He is now officially pleading guilty to federal wire fraud charges, but other big names implicated in the broader sweep, like former head coach Chauncey Billups and current player Terry Rozier, are currently maintaining strict not guilty pleas.
That's going to be messy.
This investigation is going to slowly, painfully rip through the basketball world.
And, you know, from guys trying to hustle illegal poker games in the Hamptons, you look at how the real lethal underworld operates, and it is genuinely horrifying.
Yeah, the U.S. Treasury just dropped massive crippling sanctions on a global mercenary pipeline.
This shifts from pathetic sports fraud to the actual blood-soaked business of war.
Right.
The Treasury targeted a highly organized recruitment network based right out of Bogota, Colombia.
What exactly are they doing?
What this network is doing is taking former, highly trained Latin American Special Forces operatives and rerouting them across the globe to fight for the RSF, the Rapid Support Forces, in the Sudanese civil war.
Wait, why Latin American Special Forces? Why not just recruit locally in Africa?
Because these guys are highly trained in urban and jungle warfare, counterinsurgency, and advanced tactical maneuvers by their own governments.
Often with U.S. funding, right?
Exactly, often with U.S. training and funding. When they retire or leave their domestic militaries, they have highly lethal skill sets and no high-paying jobs.
So they become mercenaries.
These private military contractors swoop in, offer them massive cash payouts, and ship them to the desert to act as elite shock troops for a brutal proxy war.
The sheer tragedy of what is happening in Sudan right now just cannot be overstated.
It is awful.
We are deep into the third year of this conflict between the RSF and the Sudanese armed forces. The scale is incomprehensible. 150,000 people are dead. 14 million people have been violently displaced from their homes. It is a humanitarian catastrophe of epic, historic proportions.
And you have these shadowy, private military recruitment agencies in South America fueling the violence by funneling highly trained soldiers for hire into the meat grinder purely for profit.
And the Treasury didn't stop their crackdown there. They also targeted the illicit economies funding autocratic regimes.
Who else did they hit?
They formally sanctioned the sons of the Nicaraguan president, Maurice and Daniel Ortega Murillo.
What are they doing?
The Murillo-Ortega dictatorship has literally been weaponizing their government to seize private, U.S.-owned property and land concessions to mine gold.
So they're basically stealing land to strip mine it.
Yes. They are using the illicit gold trade to fill their own pockets and fund the brutal suppression of any democratic opposition in the country.
Unbelievable.
The Treasury also sanctioned 7 high-ranking commanders of Iran-aligned militias operating in Iraq who have been directly responsible for directing sophisticated drone attacks against U.S. personnel.
It's all part of the exact same dark economy.
It really is.
The illicit gold from Nicaragua, the mercenary pipelines out of Colombia, the militia commanders in Iraq. It's a massive, violent, underground network.
Absolutely.
But I have to bring us back to the frauds, because there is one that happened today that isn't violent. It's just entirely baffling and aggressively stupid.
Oh, please. We need a break from the heavy stuff.
We have to talk about the South African marathon fraud.
Yes, the Two Oceans Marathon in Cape Town.
Right. This is one of the most prestigious, grueling ultramarathons on the African continent.
Okay.
So 2 adult men have been officially disqualified in disgrace and are facing 2-year bans from all professional competitive events.
Why? Did they take a shortcut?
No, it's so much worse.
Okay.
Because they literally swapped running dibs with 2 female colleagues and ran the entire race in the women's half marathon category.
You were joking.
I am not. They crossed the finish line and claimed 7th and 10th place overall in the women's elite division.
Wait, they placed in the top 10?
Yes. Taking the prize spots and the prestige away from the actual female athletes who had trained for years to earn them.
How do you even mentally justify thinking you are going to get away with that at a major, heavily scrutinized international sporting event?
I have no idea.
How were they actually caught? Did they fail a biometric scan or something?
That is the most absurd part. They didn't get caught by some sophisticated RFID tracking system or a biometric checkpoint.
Then how?
A senior race board member, Stuart Mann, was simply standing at the finish line during the awards ceremony. He physically looked at the person walking up to claim 7th place, and realized the runner had an unusually muscular, distinctly male physical appearance.
He just looked at him.
He literally just recognized one of the guys at the finish line with his own eyes.
That is incredibly bold and completely idiotic. And what happened to the women who actually gave them the bibs in the first place?
Also facing severe 2-year bans.
All right.
And one of them, a runner named Tegan Garvey, issued this completely ridiculous, tone-deaf public apology.
What did she say?
She essentially claimed she just felt bad that her expensive race entry was going to go to waste because she couldn't run. So she casually let her male friend run in her place, totally ignoring the fact that he was competing in the women's elite bracket.
That is so dumb.
The race board had to manually re-rank the entire race timing system and belatedly recognize the women who were actually pushed out of the top 10.
I bet they were furious.
Oh, beyond furious. And Stuart Mann had to publicly point out that beyond being grossly unethical, running under someone else's medical profile is insanely dangerous.
Oh, I didn't even think of that.
Yeah, if you collapse on the course from cardiac arrest, the medics are treating you based on the medical history tied to the bib.
Right, if you have allergies or something.
Exactly. It could literally kill you.
So humans are out here scamming marathons, rigging poker games, and generally making a mess of things. But nature is currently pulling off some stunts that make all of this human deception look like amateur hour. We have to talk about the death protein.
Oh, this is fascinating. We are seeing medical miracles and utter biological horrors being announced in the scientific community on the exact same day.
Let's start with the miracle because it's massive. Researchers have made a groundbreaking leap in cellular senescence.
Okay.
They have successfully mechanically removed what they call zombie immune cells in mice.
Okay, zombie cells. What does that actually mean mechanically?
Yeah.
How does a cell become a zombie?
Well, senescence is essentially cellular aging. Normally, when a cell gets old or damaged, it undergoes apoptosis. It programs its own death, and your body flushes it out.
Standard biology.
Right. But as we age, or if we subject our bodies to massive metabolic stress, like a high cholesterol diet, some of these damaged cells refuse to die.
Hence the zombie name.
Exactly. They just sit there festering in your tissue, and they begin secreting toxic chemicals that flood your organs with chronic systemic inflammation.
And the researchers figured out how to kill them.
Specifically in the liver. They discovered that in severe cases of fatty liver disease, these zombie cells accumulate so aggressively that they eventually make up the vast majority of the liver's immune population.
So they are literally suffocating the organ.
Yes. So the researchers developed a targeted therapy that medically clears these specific senescent cells out of the tissue.
And what happened?
Once the zombie cells were flushed, the liver's natural regenerative powers just instantly turned back on. They completely reverse the liver damage.
Wow.
It's a stunning breakthrough, and they are aggressively pushing to bring this to human clinical trials by 2028.
That is incredible news for anyone dealing with metabolic disease.
It really is.
But of course, biology is brutal. On the exact opposite end of the spectrum, a separate, highly funded study just identified a literal death protein lurking in our bodies.
A death protein? That sounds like a sci-fi movie.
It acts like one. This protein is an active, aggressive driver of the aging process in our blood stem cells.
What is the mechanism? How does a protein kill a stem cell?
It is far more insidious than just killing the cell outright. Think of a stem cell like a highly advanced computer.
Okay.
This death protein doesn't just delete a few files or crash the software. It acts like a vicious hardware virus that actively targets and fries the motherboard, specifically the mitochondria inside the stem cells.
Oh, the powerhouse of the cell.
Exactly. It actively damages the cell's power plant, sapping its energy reserves and slowly, permanently crippling your immune system's ability to generate new, healthy blood cells over time.
So we are quite literally rotting from the inside out at a cellular, mechanical level.
Pretty much.
That is a horrifying reality to wake up to. And speaking of massive systems suddenly collapsing, the environmental time bombs geologists are finding right now are genuinely terrifying.
What are they finding?
A comprehensive new global geological report just identified 3,100 surging glaciers currently active across the globe.
Okay, I need a visual mechanism here. Because when I think of a dangerous glacier, I think of a massive, slow-moving block of ice that is just, tragically shrinking and dripping into the ocean millimeter by millimeter every year because of climate change.
Right. What you just described is a normal retreating glacier, shrinking slowly.
Yeah.
These 3,100 surging glaciers are an entirely different beast. They are environmental landmines. They possess a rare, highly dangerous physical mechanic where they can suddenly, violently accelerate.
Wait, how does millions of tons of ice just accelerate?
It's essentially massive-scale hydroplaning.
Hydroplaning, like a car.
Exactly like a car. Meltwater pools underneath the immense weight of the glacier, acting as a high-pressure lubricant. Suddenly, the ice block loses its friction grip on the bedrock below.
Oh, no.
Without that friction holding it back, the entire multi-million-ton mass of ice surges forward, sliding hundreds of meters in a single season.
That's terrifying.
It's like a car hitting a patch of deep water on the highway and totally losing traction. When these glaciers surge, they trigger catastrophic, immediate downstream floods and massive avalanches.
Because they just let go all at once.
Yes, and they are completely unpredictable. And they sit high above mountain communities that rely on predictable, stable ice cycles. They can just detonate without warning.
That is deeply unsettling. And while the mountains are hydroplaning, the situation down at the South Pole is getting even weirder.
What's happening in Antarctica?
A brand new satellite mission, equipped with advanced altimetry sensors, just detected massive, previously hidden ocean whirlpools spinning violently near the Antarctic coast.
Whirlpools big enough to affect the ice shelves.
Massive ones. These subantarctic whirlpools are acting like giant, hidden thermal conveyor belts in the deep ocean.
What are they doing?
They are mechanically sucking warm surface water down into the depths and transporting it directly toward the vulnerable undersides of the Antarctic ice shelf.
So they are melting it from below.
Yes, they are melting the continent rapidly from below, completely out of sight. We literally couldn't even see these massive energetic systems until this specific new satellite came online and mapped the micro-deviations in the sea surface height.
We are constantly finding out that the history and the literal mechanics of our planet are totally different than we assumed.
All the time.
Look at the groundbreaking DNA analysis that just dropped regarding Doggerland.
Oh, I was reading about this. This is the sunken landmass that is currently sitting at the bottom of the cold, dark North Sea, right?
Exactly. If you look at it today, it's just a gray, barren seabed between Britain and Europe.
Right.
But scientists just deployed advanced genomic archaeological techniques, literally drilling deep core samples into the seabed sediment and amplifying microscopic fragments of ancient environmental DNA, and they proved definitively that before the last ice age completely swallowed it, Doggerland was a lush, vibrant, life-friendly haven.
Wait, mud from the bottom of the ocean proved it was a forest.
Yes. The DNA profiles show it was densely populated with thriving ancient forests of oak, elm, and hazel.
That is incredible.
It was essentially a prehistoric Garden of Eden that served as a massive, fertile migration corridor for early humans and massive Pleistocene animals. Now, it is buried under hundreds of feet of crushing saltwater.
It really puts our current fragile existence into perspective. The Earth just swallows entire ecosystems whole when the climate shifts.
It really does.
And while we are using cutting-edge science to uncover ancient history underwater, we are simultaneously pushing the absolute mechanical limits of the future. NASA's Artemis III mobile launcher just completed a massive, grueling physical move.
Oh, this is an engineering marvel. It is a 380-foot-tall, multi-million-pound steel structure.
Massive.
NASA just successfully trekked it 4 miles, crawling at a fraction of a mile per hour from Launch Complex 39B back to the Vehicle Assembly Building, the VAB.
Why did they move it?
They are meticulously prepping the infrastructure to stack the massive Artemis III Space Launch System rocket and the Orion spacecraft for the first human lunar landing in over 5 decades.
But the irony of this incredible moment in space exploration is incredibly frustrating, especially if you follow the policy side.
What's the policy issue?
The Artemis II astronauts just recently got back from their observations, and they reported seeing significantly more hazardous lunar impact flashes than our automated Earth-based sensors ever estimated.
Meaning meteorites hitting the moon?
Yes. They physically observed meteorites slamming into the lunar surface in real time.
Wow.
It proved definitively that the lunar environment is way more dynamic, violent, and dangerous than our computer models thought. It proved exactly why we need human observation and human adaptability in space. Machines miss things.
And yet, right at the exact moment they proved the absolute necessity of robust human spaceflight programs, Bill Nye and over 170 high-profile advocates from the Planetary Society are currently marching on Capitol Hill to protest.
Because of the budget.
Because Congress is proposing a catastrophic 46% cut to NASA's science budget.
46%. That's half.
It is an extinction-level threat to 50 active critical space missions. The public support and enthusiasm for space exploration is massive right now, but the actual mechanical funding is being entirely gutted by politicians.
It makes zero logical sense, but at least the private and international scientific sectors are stepping up to fill the void.
What are they doing?
The Giant Magellan Telescope Consortium just signed a multi-billion-dollar partnership to turn the Coquimbo region in Chile into a global astronomy workforce hub.
A workforce hub.
Yeah, they are building an extremely large ground-based telescope that will literally have 10 times the optical resolution of the James Webb Space Telescope.
10 times? That is staggering.
And they are brilliantly integrating a massive national visitor center into the design from day one, ensuring the local Chilean community can actually participate in and benefit economically from deep space discovery.
That is massive for regional economic growth and scientific literacy.
It really is.
But bringing our focus back from deep space to some truly bizarre biological and cultural events happening right now on Earth, we have to touch on a massive operation currently underway in Germany.
Oh, right. A massive, desperate rescue operation in the shallow waters near Wismar, Germany.
What happened?
They're trying to save a stranded humpback whale affectionately named Timmy by the locals.
How did a humpback whale get stranded there?
He got completely stuck on a shifting sandbank. The maritime authorities are literally deploying sophisticated, heavy-duty air cushions. They're trying to carefully lift this massive 15-meter mammal onto a specialized tarp secured by heavy pontoons so they can physically drag him back to the deeper waters of the North Sea.
And the public obsession with this stranded whale is totally out of control. It's a spectacle.
Oh, people are going crazy.
Local police had to set up a hard 500-meter exclusion zone around the rescue site. A 67-year-old woman was literally arrested today because she completely lost her mind, jumped off a nearby tourist boat, and tried to physically swim through the freezing water to reach the whale.
What did she think she was going to do?
Push it? Who knows? Influencers and curious bystanders are swarming the area with drones, completely stressing out this massive, sick animal while the rescue teams are trying to work.
People absolutely lose their minds over rare nature events. They have zero boundaries. Look at what is happening in Massachusetts right now.
What's going on there?
A rare corpse flower named Pangy has just reached full bloom at Mount Holyoke College's greenhouse.
The corpse flower, the one that smells like actual death.
Yes. This massive plant grew several inches a day for 6 straight weeks, building up massive amounts of energy, and then suddenly unfurled its massive petals overnight.
And the smell.
And the smell is notoriously described by botanists as the unbearable stench of rotting, decaying flesh. Mechanically, it mimics a decaying body specifically to attract flesh flies and carrion beetles for cross-pollination.
If you were watching on YouTube right now, I need you to drop a comment and honestly tell me if you would actually stand outside in a line for 6 hours just to smell a plant that smells like a rotting corpse.
Because people are doing exactly that.
People are setting up push notifications on their phones, tracking news alerts, and rushing to this greenhouse for a bloom that is only going to last 48 hours before the massive flower literally collapses in on itself and dies. It's a bizarre psychological phenomenon.
It really is cultural whiplash. You have thousands of people eagerly lining up to smell rotting vegetation, and at the exact same time, the broader entertainment culture is moving at lightning speed.
Very true.
We just had the Philippine Senate pass a formal governmental resolution to officially honor the P-pop girl group BNI for their massive debut performance at Coachella, formally recognizing them as digital age cultural ambassadors.
The speed of global culture is dizzying. We also had Paramount taking the stage at CinemaCon to officially announce Top Gun 3 is in development with Tom Cruise, and they debuted the highly anticipated trailer for Children of Blood and Bone.
Oh, the reception to that was incredible.
The industry reception to that trailer was overwhelmingly positive. It's a massive Afro-fantasy epic directed by Gina Prince Bythewood, starring Thuso Mbedu.
And the coolest mechanical detail about that production is their absolute hardcore commitment to practical effects.
How so?
The cast underwent grueling, months-long athletic and martial arts training so they could do all of their own intricate fighting choreography without relying on wires or CGI stunt doubles.
That's refreshing.
The director wanted a gritty, grounded, 360-degree physical feel. Industry analysts are already predicting it is going to be the first major fantasy franchise in a decade to truly challenge the cultural dominance of Harry Potter or Lord of the Rings.
And to cap off the sheer weirdness of today's visual culture, the NYPD just released some of the wildest, most chaotic body cam footage I have ever seen.
What do they do now?
A mounted police officer, a guy literally riding a massive horse chase down and cornered a purse snatcher in the middle of dense Manhattan traffic.
It looks like something out of an action comedy.
It does. They pursued her along crowded civilian sidewalks, ducking under construction scaffolding, and weaving dangerously between parked cars. On a horse. The suspect actually tried to evade capture by hiding behind a massive stack of construction materials, and the body cam footage just shows this massive, imposing police horse peering right over the top of the barricade, staring straight down at her.
That is amazing.
She was immediately arrested and charged with grand larceny. It's incredible footage.
We can laugh about a horse chasing a criminal down a sidewalk, but the reality of the criminal justice system today took an incredibly dark, deeply tragic turn. We need to go back to the story we teased at the very start of the episode.
Yeah, the tone has to shift here because the granular details of these cases are just heartbreaking, and they require a serious look.
They are devastating.
Yeah.
On April 16th, elite homicide detectives from the LAPD's Robbery Homicide Division arrested 21-year-old David Anthony Burke.
Who is that?
If you follow Gen Z pop and the massive indie rock scene on TikTok, you know him as the viral singer D4vd. He was arrested on suspicion of murder.
I need you to break down the timeline of the discovery because the way this unfolded and the way it was kept completely silent is what makes this so incredibly chilling.
The victim is 14-year-old Celeste Rivas Hernandez. She had been officially reported missing by her terrified family back in 2024. A massive, quiet search was underway.
Okay.
Then, in September 2025, her severely decomposing remains were finally discovered. They were found locked inside Burke's abandoned 2023 Tesla Model Y, which had been left sitting on a remote street in the Hollywood Hills.
In the Los Angeles late summer heat.
In the sweltering baking heat inside a sealed glass roof car. But the mechanical details of the crime scene are worse than just a body in a car.
How so?
The forensic investigation revealed that the Tesla contained a specific cadaver bag covered with insects and a second, heavy-duty black bag containing physically dismembered body parts. Her limbs had been intentionally severed to conceal the remains.
Oh my God. And the most gut-wrenching detail is that she was found just one single day after she would have turned 15 years old.
Just an unimaginable, horrific reality for that family to endure. Burke is currently being held in custody without bail. His high-profile, incredibly expensive defense team, led by veteran attorneys Blair Burke and Marilyn Bednarski, immediately issued a forceful public statement declaring his absolute innocence.
They are saying he didn't do it.
They are aggressively claiming that the forensic evidence will eventually prove he did not cause her death.
But what is stunning from a legal standpoint is how successfully this was kept entirely out of the press. We live in an era of constant leaks, but the LAPD managed to keep this entire homicide probe completely secret for nearly a year.
How did it finally get out?
Its existence only leaked to the public in February of 2026, and only because Burke's family filed legal objections to search warrants and subpoenas in a completely separate Texas court, and the public filings gave away the game.
The music industry is in absolute terrified shock. He had recently been abruptly canceling massive tour dates, giving vague PR statements, citing personal reasons, and now the entire world knows the dark reality behind those cancellations.
It is a stark, terrifying reminder of the deep secrets people carry right out in the open. And we saw another devastating true crime tragedy unfold in the political sphere today.
Yes, in Virginia. At roughly 5 past midnight, 12:05 a.m. on April 17th, former Virginia Lieutenant Governor Justin Fairfax shot and killed his wife, Dr. Serena Fairfax, before turning the weapon on himself and taking his own life.
The context of this is just shattering. They were in their expansive home in Annandale. Their 2 teenage children were physically in the house when the shootings occurred.
That is just beyond tragic.
Their own son was the one who had to dial 911 in the middle of the night. First responders arrived and found Serena Fairfax, who was a highly successful, widely respected dentist in the community, with multiple fatal gunshot wounds in the basement. Justin Fairfax was found upstairs with a self-inflicted wound.
The mechanical background of this tragedy is a highly contentious, escalating divorce proceeding.
Yeah.
They were legally living in the exact same house, but completely separated into different bedrooms.
Yeah.
Fairfax had recently been formally served with divorce paperwork, and a judge had just handed down a strict, legally binding deadline for him to permanently vacate the family home by the end of April. The tension was escalating rapidly.
And it had already boiled over publicly. In January of this year, he had formally, falsely accused his wife of physical assault. But that allegation was completely definitively disproven by internal surveillance cameras that Serena had purposefully installed inside the house specifically for her own protection against him.
His entire political career was completely derailed by highly publicized sexual assault allegations back in 2019. And according to close friends and journalists who covered him, he never emotionally or psychologically recovered from that fall from grace.
He was spiraling.
He was reportedly sending dark, erratic text messages to friends just days prior to the murder-suicide, expressing intense, boiling resentment over what he viewed as a societal rush to judgment against him. It is a horrific, selfish, tragic end that has left two innocent teenagers without their parents, and political leaders across the entire state of Virginia are releasing statements of profound shock and grief.
It is a heavy, heavy day of news. We have covered the macro-level global conflicts that dictate our economy, all the way down to the intimate, devastating tragedies that happen behind closed doors.
But if you think about the underlying through line of absolutely everything we talked about today, it is all connected by the concept of things hidden from plain sight.
That is very true.
From the U.S. military quietly establishing a global blockade on the open oceans, to a young girl hidden away in an abandoned luxury car in the hills, to the discovery of ancient lush forests buried deep beneath the cold mud of the North Sea. We are constantly, daily surrounded by hidden realities, whether they are grand, sweeping geopolitical agendas, terrifying secret double lives, or literal buried history beneath our feet. What hidden realities in your own immediate environment are you completely oblivious to right now?
I want to know what stood out to you the most. If you're watching on YouTube right now, drop a comment with the most insane fact or mechanical breakdown from today's episode that you are going to force your friends to listen to later tonight.
All right, if we made your drive, your workout, or your downtime even a little bit better today, do us a massive favor. Whether you're watching on YouTube, streaming on Spotify, listening on Apple Podcasts, or literally anywhere else, hit that follow or subscribe button right now. We drop episodes like this every single day, bringing you the world's news in the most interesting way possible. Lock in, because you do not want to miss the crazy stories we have queued up for tomorrow. See you then.